Thank you for joining Circle Optics 360 Pulse. I am your host, Jennifer Sertle, Director of Marketing. 360-degree imaging is part of everyday life, and Circle Optics technology is designing camera system applications to accelerate the delivery of life-saving resources, ensure aerospace safety, and increase access to immersive experience. This podcast, 360 Pulse, is dedicated to featuring immersive technology and the innovators that are working on these capabilities. Our Chief Operating Officer, Ian Gauger, and myself will be in San Diego for AUVSI's signature event, Exponential. Exponential is a yearly gathering of global leaders and end users in the uncrewed systems and robotics industry, founded on the belief that cross-pollination drives innovation. It features opportunities to connect and problem solve with experts across markets and domains. Our founder, Zach, and I attended Exponential last year in Denver, and I was lucky enough to meet our program guest today, Dawn M.K. Zoldi, a retired colonel of the U.S. Air Force. She's also a distinguished licensed attorney with 28 years of service in active duty, military, and federal civil roles. And she is the CEO and founder of P3 Technology Consulting that is renowned for expertise in uncrewed aircraft systems law and policy. She has been recognized by media outlets such as CNN, Forbes, and Newsweek, and been featured on PBS. In 2023, her Dawn of Drones podcast was recognized as the best drone podcast of the year by The Droning Company. She's also received the Air Awards People Choice Awards Impactor Award and has been recognized as one of the top women in aerospace and aviation to follow on LinkedIn. Clearly, she's a voice that we want on 360 Pulse. Welcome to the program, Dawn.
Well, such an honor to be here, Jennifer. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, exploring the frontier of legal tech and uncrewed system with your extensive background in creating impactful strategy plans and policies, could you share some of the most significant legal and ethical challenges that we face today in the integration of advanced air mobility and urban air traffic management? We're going to dive right in.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Let's solve world hunger while we're at it.
Yes.
No, seriously. I mean, Jennifer, you've been watching this industry just as I have, and so many of us have. The legal, regulatory, and policy arena is really the driver of progress or the inhibitor. And right now, I think the biggest challenge, especially if we're talking about the uncrewed aircraft system sector in particular, it's not having that beyond visual line of sight rule, right? So we saw the Aviation Rulemaking Committee, or the ARC for BVLOS, or Beyond Visual Line of Sight, come out almost 3 years ago now.
Wow.
I think it was March of 2021. And, we just haven't seen movement. Now, to the FAA's credit, we've seen, them leaning forward and granting extensive exemptions to people and waivers and things of this nature, but not having the rule or even a notice of proposed rulemaking out yet, I think is a problem. I think that's a really big challenge for people, because to have scalable, repeatable, one-to-many, beyond visual line of sight operations that you need for so many applications, whether it's drone delivery, precision agriculture, the list, long line linear inspections, the list goes on and on. Having those kinds of authorities is critical. Now, you mentioned urban air mobility and advanced air mobility as well. And that's just like a related but whole different kind of can of worms when you're thinking about some of the challenges. And I'd say an overlapping challenges for both the drone industry and the AAM crowd is the lack of even really a rule for UAS traffic management. And why is UTM relevant to AAM or UAM? Because drones and eVTOL, or electric vertical takeoff landing aircraft, they're going to share that same low altitude airspace. And, the ubiquitous flights that we anticipate in that area, there needs to be a system for it, and there needs to be a rule, right? We have concepts of operations out there right now, which is great. NASA and the FAA working on those. Whereas Europe has the use space regulation. They've had it, and it became effective this year.
Yeah.
So, when you think of the challenges my head doesn't go right to technology. Like, oh, there's all these technological challenges. I think the technology has made leaps and bounds in terms of progress. Just the regulatory front has not moved with that.
And, I think your your technology company, I think, is really working to keep those issues at the center. I see an equilateral triangle with innovation, safety, and privacy. Do you have how can you possibly strategize given that it's in motion and we have a little bit more of a complex governance strategy? So how can we make progress in balancing innovation, safety, and privacy from your perspective?
I would. When I think of the triangle, honestly, innovation is kind of an overarching thing that is like above that triangle. I think of safety, security, and privacy as kind of the three legs of the stool, if you will. And, all of those are related. Again, given my background, I always go back to standards. I go back to laws and regulations and what's out there. And in terms of, let's take security. I think we've made a lot of progress in the security arena in terms of standards. AUVSI, for example, has a cybersecurity group, and they're working hard to push out some standards. You've seen things like Defense Innovations Unit, Blue UAS, really focused on cybersecurity in terms of, drone connectivity and, the safeness of that. AUVSI's related Green UAS program, so this, and of course, NIST has put out cybersecurity standards. So in terms of kind of standards and progress, we're seeing movement in the cybersecurity arena. For privacy is one of those things that's very subjective. It's like, I know it when I see it, or it's very subjective in terms of people and how they feel about something. In terms of the law, it's very complex because privacy is something that's governed at the state level. In other words, there's really no federal overarching privacy law. You have the Privacy Act that pertains to records. You have the Freedom of Information Act. That's the flip side of the Privacy Act on the federal side. But that's not, when people think of privacy in terms of the drone industry and autonomous systems, they're thinking in their heads, are these things spying on me? And what are the rules that protect me? And that's a state level issue. So what we've seen over the last couple of years is a whole host of, facial recognition type laws crop up, artificial intelligence laws, even consumer protection laws that apply privacy principles to data that's going online that might be coming, captured from a drone, posted online. Those things are going to apply. So, that's something that I think you really have to be a student of this, or if you're a business, have a really good lawyer that can walk you through these things, what quagmires you might be stepping into in terms of privacy. And then last but not least, safety. That's clearly the FAA's lane. I mean, that's what they do every single day. So just following those rules that are already out there, and hopefully some new rules in the future, like we talked about beyond visual line of sight. Those are the three legs of the stool that I think, in terms of uncrewed autonomous systems, affect the innovation, affect the whole entire industry and this space. And Jennifer, to your earlier point, this is kind of my world. This is what I write about. This is what I talk about. This is exactly why I do the Law Tech Connect workshop, because all of these things affect the industry. And, so I hope people get a chance. They look at my website, P3 Tech Consulting, all of my podcasts, all of my articles, my previous Law Tech Connect panels are all posted up there.
You are I think that's one of the things that I was so inspired by, your level of generosity and how you are really disseminating information as quick as you can. Can you just, given the landscape and how much new information there is all the time, what are your habits in terms of integrating information, and what are your sources? How do you find balance in not getting information overload? This question wasn't prepared, but as I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in New York State, Empire State Chapter AUVSI, and I have just one company that I'm trying to keep access to the news for, and you're actually looking nationwide and also global integration. So how do you manage all that information to be able to be so generous with the most important things?
I'll tell you what, I'm really blessed to have the opportunity to work with so many different global companies and experts. I learn a ton actually through my own podcasts and the companies that come on them. There's a company, for example, that's going to be on this very week called Horizon Aerobotics. Like, I've never worked with them before. And just interviewing Denver Hopkins, the CEO, on Wednesday that I'm going to do, I'm going to learn all about that company, just like anybody who watches this show.
Yeah.
So it's a huge blessing for me to have this opportunity to work with such a diverse group of companies and people globally. And I learned so much just by talking to them. I also learned by going to these shows, Jennifer. You mentioned AUVSI Exponential. AUVSI is my primary partner with the Dawn of Autonomy podcast and my Law Tech Connect workshop, which I co-locate with Expo every year. So going to events like Expo, running the floor, talking to people, networking, I also learn a ton that way. Now, on a daily basis, how else am I getting my information? I've got sources. I'm not going to reveal the whole, all of my sources.
Yeah.
But let's just put it this way. There's so many news sources out there that are worth getting dropped into your inbox just to do a quick scan. Because you know what? You're going to find one nugget that you didn't know from any one of those sources. And Drone Life is a great one. Miriam McNabb, they were our original partners on what used to be the Dawn of Drones is now the Dawn of Autonomy.
Yeah.
I love her newsletter. I get that every week. The droning company, you mentioned them and that we won their award. Well, Stuart Smith and his team, they're putting out great stuff, especially if you're a drone pilot.
Yeah.
Very tailored to that crowd. But given my national security background, I'm tapped into military embedded systems and breaking defense. I also have a really interesting listserv that gives me a lot of the Federal Register type stuff that's more on the legal side from my former career as a JAG and general counsel and those connections. Things like this. I get legal listservs because I'm still a member of the American Bar Association, still a licensed attorney. So on a daily basis, I'm getting a lot of things in my inbox. I may not have time to read them all, but I'm definitely scanning them. And like I said, every now and again, pretty much for every scan, I'm going to get one nugget of something that I didn't know. And that takes me maybe less than an hour every day just to kind of go through that.
That's amazing.
So that's what I would tell people is subscribe to the newsletters. By the way, including mine, P3 Tech, we have our own newsletter. You can go on my website and just put your email address in and you'll get it every Tuesday. That way you'll get all my articles and things right into your inbox. Go to these events, talk to people, and then, of course, follow people on LinkedIn. That's the last thing I'll say is I think a great source of information is LinkedIn and some social media outlets. Again, take it with a grain of salt. There's a lot of junk out there.
Right.
But you will find people like, for example, former, let's just call him the grandfather of Europe's drone regulations, Yves Morier from France. He's always putting out EASA stuff. And so I get a lot of my European updates from by following Yves on LinkedIn. So follow the right people and you will absolutely learn.
That's great. There's a wonderful writer and professor, Clay Shirky, that had said actually about a decade ago, the issue is not information overload, it's filter failure. And I think that's kind of interesting. And I think of you as just an incredible filter. And so those of you that are listening, if you go to Circle Optics website, we have a podcast link, and this program will be transcribed with some of the links, and following Dawn on LinkedIn and Twitter and seeing us retweet her, you will certainly get some of that information, which is great. You know, going back to the fact that so much is state regulated here, what are the steps that cities and policymakers need to do to prepare for the integration of some of this technology, you know, vertiports and eVTOLs in our urban environments? And, you know, part of AUVSI is about advocacy. And as Circle Optics, you know, what should we be asking of our policymakers, please?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do before you ask, I guess the first question you can ask them is, do they even know about this technology? I mean, what's really frightening is how many lower level governmental entities, including ones that are in charge of transportation planning, have no visibility and or no interest in drones, advanced air mobility, urban air mobility. And so just even asking the question like, do you even know about this, and where are we on this? And then secondarily, once they tell you, which for the most part, unless like you're talking, you know, North Central Texas Council of Governments run by Ernest Huffman, that is like one of the leading groups out there, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, what Ernest has done in Texas is amazing. But I'd say the majority of places, if you ask that question, the answer is going to be maybe a blank stare. And then the question is, what can I do to help you? You know, and that's where education comes into play. And you know, there's groups out there like the Community Air Mobility Initiative, CAMI, that puts out some great products on this that are free and resources on their website. I just saw, you know, NASA put out their community integration playbook, I think last summer. I've just seen two more roll out, one which Dr. Yolanda Wolf, you know, the one of the leaders of CAMI, participated in. It was out of Minnesota. I'm going to be posting that out soon. So, you know, I think asking where they are, providing assistance with education, I think those are the two kind of baby steps that really need to happen right away, because these planning cycles are not just 5 years out. Some of these are 20 years out, and some places aren't even thinking about this, and they're just going to fall behind. So, you know, and that's going to be a problem.
Well, looking at your experience with the U.S. Air Force Academy, and can you talk a little bit about leadership and some of the practices or principles that have really led your career to be able to make such impact now?
Wow. Okay, leadership. That's also a huge topic, and you know what I'll say about leadership. It is something very near and dear to my heart. I mean, I created the Full Tilt podcast, which is tech industry leadership talks, specifically because in certain ways we are all leaders in our own right. You know, I don't care where you are in an organization. This is something I learned throughout my time in the Air Force. You know, as a first lieutenant, I didn't start out necessarily running things and, you know, kind of leading people. It's over time and gaining that experience and additional positions that you become, you know, a leader. But a leader isn't about a position. It's about how you work with and treat people. And, you know, one thing I'll say about leadership, you know, as you look around our society, diversity, equity, inclusion has become somehow, you know, a negative word in some spaces. I've been working quite a bit with Women in Drones, who frankly is a leader as an organization in the drone industry and emerging technologies. Sharon Rossmark, their CEO, Marlene Dials from the Diversity Development Network of Canada, and myself, a couple years ago, put out a survey for the drone industry in particular about diversity. And what we learned from the over 1,000 responses we got, which by the way is very significant, it's all about leadership. In other words, diversity and workforce development, none of this is a program, and it's not politically correct. It's about treating people right. It's about, respecting them. It's about appreciating them. It's about giving them a voice and opportunities, and, setting a bar at such a level that people will rise to that level, and cheering them on when they do. And when they don't, because you know what, people fail, celebrating those failures too, and finding a way then to move forward. And so, man, I'm getting chills because leadership is something to me that is so critically important in everything we do. Whether you're a business owner, CEO, whether you're a middle manager, whether you are just the entrant into an organization, being a leader and leadership, what I learned from the Air Force, it's all about relationships and working together to accomplish a mission. That's what it is. And, so I can go on and on about this, Jennifer, but like I said, this is something that obviously I'm also very passionate about.
Well, what's so exciting is that, I ask questions about our policymakers and what you talked about was what we have to give, right? What we have to do is be informed, find the right sources, and stay current. What we have to give is to disseminate information and make sure that people are walking in step with us and to lead wherever you're standing. I just feel so inspired by that. We have been talking to Don M.K. Zoldi, founder of P3 Technology Consulting. We'd like to thank the Institute of Optics, Genius New York, Luminate Accelerator, AFWorks, Cider Technologies, Archangel Imaging, and AUVSI. Special mention to our producer, Scott Fitzgerald at Rockvox Studios in the heart of optics here in Rochester, New York. By all means, we hope that you listen and share this program. We're very interested in how immersive technology positively impacts safety and human connection, and we've certainly heard a lot about that today. If you know a story we should be covering or feature, please let me know at jennifer@circleoptics.com. Thank you for joining us.